All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today, we're taking a look at setting up the tabernacle, that portable worship space the Israelites used. It's all detailed in Numbers chapter 7. We're using the King James Version of the Bible for this deep dive. And we wouldn't think building a place of worship would be so complex,
Right.
even a portable one. We're going to be focusing on the dedication ceremony and what each of the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel offered up.
Okay.
And I think you might be surprised at some of the things they brought.
Well, it's easy to think of this event as, kind of simple.
Yeah.
But it's much deeper than that. The tabernacle, it wasn't just a tent. It was a powerful symbol for the Israelites.
Right.
It represented their covenant with God, their commitment to their faith.
Okay, so let's set the scene. So Moses, he's just finished setting up this very elaborate tabernacle.
Yeah.
And now it's time to make it official. So who comes bearing gifts?
Well, it would be the princes
Right.
of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they didn't exactly come empty-handed.
No, they did not. So what did they bring?
They brought 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen.
Wow.
Very practical gifts.
Yeah.
For nomadic people,
Absolutely.
Keep in mind, they're traveling through the wilderness,
Yeah.
and that tabernacle had to be moved from one place to the next.
So it's like they gifted them the moving trucks and the muscle to get it done.
Yes.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. These wagons and oxen,
Yeah.
they didn't just leave them in a pile.
Right.
Moses was told to give them to the Levites based on their specific duties.
Uh-huh.
What was the thinking there?
Well, you see, this gets to the heart of the Israelites' social and religious structure.
Okay.
The Levites, they were the tribe chosen to serve the tabernacle.
Right.
So everything, transporting it,
Right.
assembling it, conducting all the rituals, taking care of all those sacred objects.
So they're like a combination of like movers,
Yes.
maintenance crew,
Yeah.
and religious leaders all rolled into one. That's a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely. A lot of responsibility. And
Yeah.
the way they divided up the resources actually tells us about a hierarchy
Okay.
within the Levites themselves.
Oh, interesting.
So, for example, the sons of Gershon, they were in charge of the curtains, the coverings.
Right.
They got 2 wagons and 4 oxen.
Okay.
But the sons of Merari, now they were the ones responsible for that heavier framework.
Right.
And they got 4 wagons
Oh, so they got double.
and 8 oxen.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You give the heavier lifting crew more horsepower. But what about the sons of Kohath? They had the most sacred items,
Right.
like the Ark of the Covenant,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't get any wagons or oxen?
They didn't. It's interesting.
Why not?
Because they were actually forbidden
Really?
from using wagons or oxen. They had to carry these holy objects on their shoulders.
Wow.
This act, you see, symbolized how sacred their job was
Yeah.
and the direct physical connection they had with the divine.
It's like a special honor, but also a physically demanding one.
Absolutely.
It really emphasizes the weight of their responsibility.
Uh-huh.
And what I find so fascinating about all of this is that these details, these little details,
Right.
are more than just historical trivia. You
Yeah.
know, they give us real insights into what the Israelites believed and valued.
I completely agree. Every single element of this dedication ceremony was carefully chosen.
Right.
And it all had meaning. Take, for example, the individual offerings that each prince brought.
Oh,
For 12 days, one after the other,
wow.
each prince presented the exact same gift.
So we're talking silver chargers, silver bowls, gold spoons. We're going to get into all those details in a bit.
Yes.
But before we do, can you explain why it was so important for those offerings to be identical?
Well, it emphasizes that they're unified
Okay.
and that they're equal in God's eyes. No tribe was more important or favored than another.
Right.
They were all equal participants in this dedication.
It's like they were saying, we may be 12 different tribes, but we stand together as one in our devotion to God. Now I have to ask, those silver chargers, the bowls, the spoons,
Right.
were that just for show, or did those have a practical use in the tabernacle?
Well, you're right. The quantity of precious metals is impressive.
Yeah.
But they weren't just decorative. They were actually used in various rituals and ceremonies,
Okay.
like preparing the incense and the offering.
Oh, I see. So everything, the wagons, the spoons, it all had a purpose,
Yes.
both practical and symbolic.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't just about precious metals, right? Each prince also brought all kinds of animals. What was the meaning behind that?
Well, the animals were at the center of their sacrificial rituals, a really key part of the Israelites' worship.
Right.
They brought bullocks, rams, lambs, goats.
Wow.
each one representing a different type of offering.
Okay, so we've got wagons for transport, bowls and spoons for rituals, and animals for sacrifices.
Yes.
It's starting to sound like a very elaborate housewarming party. It does a bit, doesn't it?
But let's take a closer look at those animal offerings and what they represented.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned burnt offerings, sin offerings, peace offerings before, but could you break those down a little bit more? For those of us who maybe aren't as familiar with ancient Israelite rituals?
Sure. Each offering had a specific purpose and symbolism.
Okay.
So, for example, the burnt offering, it was usually a male animal without any blemishes,
Okay.
represented complete surrender and dedication to God.
Right.
So the entire animal was burned on the altar,
Wow.
signifying the offering of one's whole self to the divine.
So it's not just about giving back to God, it's about giving your entire self.
Exactly.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Okay, now what about sin offerings?
Okay, the sin offering.
I'm guessing those had a bit of a different meaning.
Yes, the sin offering was a way for them to atone for unintentional transgressions,
Okay.
or when they had become ritually impure.
So they would burn a specific part of the animal on the altar, and the rest was given to the priests. It was a way to acknowledge they had done wrong
Right.
and to seek forgiveness, to be purified.
Okay, and then there's the peace offerings.
Yes.
What was the purpose of those?
Now, peace offerings were a bit different.
Okay.
They were really about celebrating communion and fellowship with God.
Okay.
So part of the animal was burned on the altar, part of it was given to the priests, and then the rest was eaten by the person who made the offering and their family.
Okay.
It was a very joyful occasion.
Right.
It symbolized harmony
Okay.
and reconciliation.
So each offering had a very unique purpose.
Yes.
Reflecting different aspects of their relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that each prince brought those same offerings
Right.
really reinforces that idea of unity and equality. Right.
Exactly. This uniformity, it wasn't just about following a checklist.
Right.
It was about expressing that they were a collective. Okay. They had this shared commitment to their covenant with God.
Right.
It is a very powerful statement about their beliefs and their dedication to living according to divine law.
Okay, so we've got the scene set.
Uh-huh.
The offerings are all laid out.
Yep.
The Levites are ready to get to work.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next? Do they just all go home and call it a day?
Not quite. The dedication ceremony ends with a really key moment.
Okay.
It sets the stage for their journey.
Oh, okay.
Moses, he goes into the tabernacle to seek guidance from God.
Here's where we get to the really interesting part. It's not just about setting up a tent. It's about establishing a direct line of communication with God.
Yeah.
What happens when he enters the tabernacle?
Well, he hears a voice speaking to him.
Okay.
But not from a burning bush.
Right.
Not from a mountaintop. This time it's from between the two cherubims.
Wow.
On the Ark of the Covenant.
He's hearing a voice directly from the most sacred spot in the tabernacle.
That's right.
That's incredible.
Yep.
And we're going to dive into the details of that divine communication.
Yes.
And what it means for both Moses and the Israelites in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the dedication of the tabernacle. When we left off, Moses had just entered the tabernacle and heard a voice speaking to him.
Right.
Coming from between the cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
This seems like a major change in how God's communicating with the Israelites.
It is. It really is a pivotal moment. This event, it establishes the tabernacle as the place where Moses and God will meet.
Okay.
No more mountaintops.
Right.
No more burning bushes.
So it's like they set up a divine hotline.
Exactly.
Directly connecting Moses to God.
It's a direct connection.
Does this mean only Moses gets this special access?
Well,
Or could other Israelites talk to God in the tabernacle too?
that's where Moses' role as the go-between becomes super important.
Okay.
He's the one who relays God's laws and guidance to the people.
Got it.
Think of it this way. God talks to Moses.
Yeah.
And then Moses explains it all to the Israelites.
It's like a chain of communication.
Yes.
Making sure that God's message gets to the entire community.
Exactly. And this system, it's essential, especially since they're about to go on this very dangerous journey.
Yeah, through the wilderness.
They're going to need guidance.
Right.
And Moses, because he has this direct link with God, he can give them that guidance.
So having a designated leader, someone who can talk to God, would definitely help them stay unified and organized during such a tough time.
Absolutely. having this structured way of communicating,
Yeah.
it really shows how important leadership is.
Right.
And that there needs to be a very clear way to receive and share those instructions from God.
It's about making sure everyone understands.
Yes.
And follows the same rules.
Right.
You know, it's fascinating to think that this story is thousands of years old, yet it still has meaning for us today. What can we, in the 21st century, take away from this ancient ritual?
Well, that's a great question. I think there are a few key takeaways that are still relevant, no matter the time or culture.
Okay.
One of the most striking is this focus on everyone being responsible.
Okay.
You know, everyone from the princes to the Levites, they all had a role in building and maintaining the tabernacle.
It wasn't just about each person being religious on their own.
Yeah.
It was about everyone working together
Exactly.
for something bigger than themselves.
And that shared responsibility, it wasn't just limited to like physical work.
Right.
It also included the offerings.
Yeah.
The sacrifices they made showed how devoted they were.
And speaking of offerings, let's dig a bit deeper into what they symbolized.
Okay.
They weren't just random gifts, were they?
No, not at all.
I mean, the silver, the gold, the animals, the way they were prepared,
Mm-hmm.
it all had a specific meaning, right?
Each element, absolutely.
So what about the silver and gold? What did those symbolize?
Well, they represent purity
Okay.
value. And they show that the Israelites were willing to give their most prized possessions to God.
Like saying, we're giving you the best we have.
Yes.
A real sign of devotion.
Exactly. And then you have the animals,
Right.
each one representing a different part of their relationship with God.
Like the burnt offering you mentioned before.
Right, the burnt offering.
Symbolized complete surrender and dedication.
Yes. The sin offering was all about atonement, seeking forgiveness.
And the peace offerings
Yes.
were to celebrate that connection and fellowship with God.
It's amazing how each offering reflects a different aspect of their faith.
It is.
And their desire to connect with the divine.
And it's important to remember, these weren't just empty actions. They really meant it. It was a real expression of their beliefs, their hopes.
Their desire to live in line with God's will.
It makes me think about how the idea of sacrifice, even though maybe it's less literal for us today, still matters.
I agree. We may not be offering animals on an altar,
right?
But the idea of sacrifice, it still resonates.
What are we willing to give up?
Exactly.
What are we willing to prioritize to serve something greater than ourselves?
Yes. What are our modern day offerings?
What a thought-provoking question. Maybe it's about giving our time, our energy to causes we care about.
Right.
Or making choices,
yes,
even if they're hard, that match our values.
Absolutely.
It's about realizing that real devotion means sacrifice, being willing to put something bigger than us first.
You said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Now, before we finish up,
yeah,
there's this one little detail at the end of chapter 7 that I found interesting.
Okay.
It almost seems like a side note.
Yeah.
But I think it sets us up for what's next. It mentions Moses going into the tabernacle to talk with God. But the way it's worded, it's interesting.
What is it?
It says he heard the voice of one speaking unto him.
Hold on.
Not God's voice.
Okay. One.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically say it's God.
No, it doesn't.
So who is this one speaking to Moses?
Right. That's the question.
Is it an angel? Like a messenger?
Could be.
Or a different side of God himself?
Maybe.
It's like a little mystery tucked away at the end of the chapter.
It is.
Makes you want to know more.
I know.
Well, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive.
It does.
We've explored the significance of the tabernacle as that meeting place between Moses and God, the role of Moses as that go-between, and that lasting relevance of shared responsibility and sacrifice.
Yes.
We dug into what those offerings symbolize.
Right.
From the precious metals to the animals.
Uh-huh.
We uncovered all those layers of meaning woven into each ritual.
But there's more to come. In part 3, we're going to tackle that mysterious voice and explore what it means for Moses and the Israelites as they head into the unknown.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's been fascinating looking at this dedication ceremony.
It has.
From those practical details to that profound symbolism.
Right.
Now, as we wrap up our exploration of Numbers chapter 7, let's get to that mystery we left off with the voice Moses hears from the mercy seat.
Right. It seems like a small detail when you first read it.
It does.
But over the centuries, it's caused a lot of debate and different interpretations.
Exactly. Just to remind everyone, Moses hears a voice
Mm-hmm.
coming from between the cherubim and the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
But it doesn't actually say it's God speaking.
Right.
So it leaves things open to interpretation.
Right.
What are some of the leading theories about this voice? Who or what is it?
Well, some scholars think it's an angel
Okay.
acting as God's messenger.
That makes sense.
Angels often do that in the Bible, you know?
Right.
They deliver God's words and instructions to humans.
Kind of bridging the gap between the divine and the earthly realm.
Exactly. Like God is choosing to communicate through a representative.
Yeah.
Maybe to highlight how sacred that space is.
Okay.
Or to emphasize the importance of this new way of communicating.
It's like setting up a protocol,
Yes.
a way of making sure there's reverence and respect in that holy setting.
Uh-huh. Others think that the voice is a personification of God's word.
Okay.
Or God's presence.
Not a separate being,
Right, not necessarily.
but like an embodiment of God's will or message.
Yes, almost like divine energy or power becoming manifest.
It makes you think about how we often try to define God,
We do.
to put God in a box.
Mm-hmm.
But this verse suggests a much broader view.
Right.
God can interact with us in ways we don't expect.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's an important lesson.
Yeah.
No matter what your beliefs are.
Yeah.
It's about being open to the mystery,
Right.
to the possibility of experiencing the divine or the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
in ways we might not imagine.
Okay, so we've talked about some interpretations of this voice.
Yeah.
But how does this impact Moses and the Israelites going forward?
Well, it really establishes the tabernacle as the main place
Okay.
where God will communicate with his people.
Right.
From this point on, Moses will always seek guidance from God in this sacred space.
It's like setting up a direct line.
It
You
is.
get divine instructions.
Yes, and it shows how important it is
Yeah.
to have a special place.
A place set apart
Yeah, separate from the everyday.
to connect with the spiritual realm.
And you know, that idea still resonates today.
It does.
A lot of people,
Right.
no matter their faith,
Yeah.
they find value in having sacred spaces.
Okay.
It might be a quiet corner at home, or a place of worship,
Oh,
or
like-
even a spot in nature
Yeah.
where they feel connected to something bigger.
So we've explored a lot in this deep dive.
We have?
The offerings,
Yeah.
what they symbolize,
Yeah.
the hierarchy of service, and that
Mhm.
mysterious voice.
Mm-hmm.
But stepping back for a moment,
Okay.
why should any of this matter to someone listening today
Good question.
in 2023?
How do we connect these old stories to our modern lives?
Exactly.
Well, I think one key takeaway is the power of ritual and ceremony.
Okay.
They help connect us to something beyond ourselves.
Right.
Even though we don't do the same rituals as the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
The main idea is still important.
Going to a religious service,
Yeah.
taking part in cultural traditions,
Right.
or just taking time for quiet reflection.
Mm-hmm.
These intentional actions can help us tap into something deeper.
Something that goes beyond our daily routine.
Exactly. And I also think the idea of shared responsibility is crucial.
Oh.
The Israelites all came together,
Right.
each one with a role to play.
To build and keep their sacred space.
It wasn't just about individual faith.
Yeah.
It was a group effort,
Right.
understanding that they were all part of something bigger. It's a good reminder that we need each other.
Absolutely.
We need to work together
Yeah.
to create something truly meaningful.
And finally, the idea of sacrifice.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we need to be willing to give something of ourselves.
Okay.
Whether it's time, energy, resources,
Right.
even our own comfort
Mm-hmm.
for something we believe in.
It's about putting our values first,
Exactly.
making choices that match those values, even when it's hard.
Yes, it's about living intentionally.
Okay.
Making choices that reflect what we truly believe in
Right.
and trying to make a positive difference in the world.
So as we finish up this deep dive into Numbers chapter 7,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Okay.
If we were to dedicate a sacred space in our own lives today, a place, a project, a cause,
Right.
something that represents what we value,
Yeah.
what would we offer?
That's a good one.
What sacrifices would we be willing to make
Right.
to support it,
Mm-hmm.
to help it grow?
It's a great question to think about.
It is.
Maybe reflecting on this ancient ritual can give us some inspiration.
Maybe it can help us create our own meaningful spaces,
Absolutely.
live with more purpose,
Yes.
and make a positive impact on the world around us.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Numbers chapter 7.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some new insights
Yeah,
and some fresh perspectives.
absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions,
Yes.
and keep looking for those deeper connections that make life so rich and meaningful.